Welcome to Eduonix Learning Solutions for our course for GraphQL for beginners. In this session, we have to deal with schemas, and also we will see how to connect GraphQL across other platforms and how to use the resolver. So these are the certain crucial things that we have to see in this particular session. So now let's begin with setting up the server first. So to do it, we have to first clone the data from GitHub. So let's just say git, and you have to say clone, and then we have to give out the address. So we have to give out the following address. So we are doing it from GitHub. So we'll say github.com/ then Apollo stack, and then we have to say Apollo starter kit. And since now I have already have it installed on my machine, if I'll click enter or press enter, I'll see a destination path already exists and is not the empty directory. So I cannot do it again, but you have to do it first, and then you have to move your command prompt to the location of this particular folder. So it says Apollo starter kit, and then hit the enter. So now we have entered into the particular location. So we want server, so we say, and then you have to say server only. And now it says the branch server only setup to track remote branch server only from origin, switch to a new branch. So now we have to say npm install. So when I do all this, I assume that you already have Node.js and npm installed for your machine, so which we had discussed in the introduction. So now we have to install it. So installation has begun, so we have to wait for installation to finish up. So now if we see server is been already called and installed, so let us now move ahead and say npm start and hit the enter. So now we will wait for the computer to respond to it, and now it says Apollo starter kit from the particular location is being taken, and node has been set. So now it is starting the server. So it is returned with the information that GraphQL server is currently running on HTTP 8080, so local host it is, and we just have to copy paste this link in the browser. And once you copy paste this, we are available with the GraphQL interface that we are looking for such a long time now in so many lectures. But this is a bit different. This has been cloned from GitHub, so this may have a different schema. This has different interface, not interface exactly, but it has got different schema, different data to deal with. So now let us see whether it's working or not. So you just have to throw a test string like we are doing it, and you can press Ctrl Enter and see. You could have run from pressing the button and see. So it says test ring, it works. So it has returned with the some value which was in the form of the string, and it has returned with the value it works. So now we are not yet aware of what schema is being used or schema currently it is using, but in some time we'll come across and see what sort of schema is used, how to modify the schema, and we'll actually create the schema file to the place where it exists for this current database, and we will change the schema and we'll put some other queries and see then how it responds to those queries. So we'll build schema, save the schema, and actually put queries and then see how it responds with the change in the schema. And along with that, we also have to see some resolvers, and also we have to see how will GraphQL be connected to SQL. So we'll come on to that in a later part. So for now, let's begin with schema in the next part. Now it is the time for us to understand the schema. But before that, you have to go to the location where you have installed the file that we had cloned from GitHub. And into that particular location, you will find a file with the name Apollo Starter Kit. And inside that folder, you will find another folder named data. Once you double click on the data, you will be able to see that there are two files that are present inside the data. One is mocks, second is schema. So this is the schema file that is currently into the use in the interface of the GraphQL, which we are supposed to change now. So because this was only holding a type string, so test string, and it was holding a type string, but now we have to instruct our GraphQL how a query can be accepted and how a query has to be responded. So at the core of GraphQL Server, there is a schema. So schema defines types and their relationships. So it also specifies which queries can be made against the server. So all those things we have to define using the schema. So the schema notion supports all GraphQL types. And for now, come on to what schema currently the interface was holding. So it had got type query, test string, which was of the form string. So this was the schema that it was currently holding, and we are now supposed to change it, because this is not the only query, as we have seen earlier too, that we are going to raise. There can be number of queries that we have to put against the data and then extract the data according to it. So this is just for testing purpose. A test string was raised, but now we will actually develop the schema which will be using it over here. So upper part is like constant type definitions equal to, let's keep that part same, and now say type author, and author has got 4 fields, which is one of them is ID, and it has got type int. Next is author has got first name, so first name we have to, and then it has got type string. Obviously this has got a character type, and last it has got last name here, which is again of a type, so you have to say string. So you have to be very careful while we are typing this. And then it has got post, and it has got type. So basically it's got no type, but it is an array that refers to the author's post. Now let's close this type author, and now post also will have some fields which will be defining what post will hold. So it has got ID, so post also has its own ID, which is of the type int. Then we have title in here, so let's say sort of type string. Then there is a text field, which is again a string in nature or a string in type. Views is again the next field, which is of integers type, so this will count the views. And then we have author over here, which will be the calling author that we have declared above. We have to make it okay. So now we are supposed to close it. Now since we have defined types, we now have to tell server about the query type. So now what sort of query users are allowed to raise, that we have to tell to the server. So now we type query, and inside that query we have to first say about author. So author has got first name, so first name can be queried, which is of the type string, comma, the last name was there, so it can be a last name that can be queried, so we have to specify the last name, and it is of the type string, so we have to just specify the type of string, obviously. Okay, and then we are supposed to close this bracket and author, and then we'll say get fortune cookie, so it's string, and then we have to use this later on, so we'll say okay. So and just close this down on the next line, and then how you expect the schema to be, define the schema. So now you say query, and when a query is being raised, it should throw query that we have declared above in a type statement, and you just have to close this, and you have to mention export default type definitions in down there, like I have declared it. Just don't forget to put a semicolon after this last schema over there. And then while saving the file, you have to save it as schema.js. Now I already have saved this file with this particular name, so you just save it any place, and say I'll be doing it at the location where, so it says schema.js and it says replace it, so I am supposed to replace it. You can create it anywhere and copy paste it in this particular location. And now by default, if we have run npm start, it is supposed to automatically take this as its own schema. So let's, in the next part, let's look at how to mock it, how to mock the schema that we have created in GraphQL. So, and it will happen in the local host at 8080 port, which we already saw earlier too. So let's see how to mock it in the next part. Now let's talk about mocking. But before that, now we have changed the schema and created the new schema. And since we have used the command npm start to start the server, we do not have to do it again. The schema will automatically be replaced. The default schema is replaced by the new schema that we create. So it is overwritten. Now let us first of all understand whether the query, the schema that we have created, is actually applicable or not. So let us try to write a query. So author, and in the bracket we have to specify first name, if you remember the pattern of the schema that we created. So it's a string type, hence has to be under the quotations, right? And then we also in schema specify that we'll specify a last name. So we are specifying a last name, since last name was also been declared as a string, so it has to be under. Do not have to make any mistakes over here. This is bit case sensitive, so it's inside, it is quotation, so it is a bit case sensitive data. And what you want first name, you want last name, so you can click on that. So again you can press Control space bar, and we want post. And now since we remember post also has got certain subfield, so for example we take title, and we will take views for example, and try to execute this query. Now if you observe it here, first name is being returned, the last name is being returned, title is being returned. So this is something that we have got as a response. So you might be wondering how GraphQL came up with the response, even though we didn't tell where to go to get the data from. So it is very actually simple. So we told server in the starter kit to mock the data, and that is what it is doing currently. That doesn't look actually very realistic, so we are going to have to change that. So let's do and change the data. Okay, so mocking is used to change the data and makes it more realistic. So right now the server is using the same string everywhere. It works, it is using it. So we are going to tell how it has to mock, and first name and last name of the author has to be bring into the system, and how to mock a title, text and views for the post. We also have to tell that if we queried for the specific author, the author return should have the name we are searching for. So in order to do that, we have to first get into the command prompt and run npm install casual, which we'll do now. So we have to just say npm install casual. So if you can see over here, the installation is just begun over here. And now after that, in the notepad again, we have to write a code for mocking it. So let's do it in a notepad, and then again, like we saved the file earlier with the name with JS extension into it, we saw actually there are two files. So one is mock and the other file that we saved as a schema. So now we will again change that mock file over here just to extract the exact required name and not to use that text again and again. It works. So to extract the proper data, we have to do it. So let us try to write the code in notepad and again try to save it and overwrite it into the mock location over there. So now let's start writing the code and say import casual from, and that we have to specify in quotations casual, and we have installed it prehand before using this mock. So now it says const mocks, and have to put equal to and then begin writing in a curly bracket. It says string, then you have to specify string, and we have what, and it says it works, and it has to be closed, and then query. So how you wish a query to be. So query has to be inside the curly bracket, and then it should say it requires author, which will be available obviously from root, and as an argument, so we wrote it as args args, and then close it, and then we say what you want to be in return. Once you do it, once you query it this way, you want return as first name. Make n capital into here. So first name, and it should give us argument as a first name, comma, when it should be a last name, what should be returned is argument dot last name, and then we are supposed to close it. So in short, we are instructing what we are expecting as a response over here. So every time what it should be responding to us with. And now let's get into, okay, we are supposed to close this and comma, and there is one more curly bracket that needs to be closed, and then circle bracket. And now author, what it shall have, so it is a query author, so it should hold first name, and it has to be casual dot first name. So that's we have installed, and that is the reason we have installed it. And then you say a last name, and that last name, what should it contain, that we have to specify over here. So it should contain last underscore name, and make a change in above location too. It has to be, since it is into a casual dot way, so it does not have to be a continuous name. It has to be written as casual dot last name. Okay, and this is when you have queried for author. Now what should be reflected when it is a query for post? So that also we have to specify logically. So it says for post. Now what you want when it has to be a post, that will specify in here. Make a gap, and then say what you want when it has to be a. So when it is a post, we need a title out of it. So title, and a title should be casual dot title, comma, text should be what? Text. But over here there is a bit twist, so we'll say casual dot sentences, and it will specify a number, so we'll keep it to 3. Alright, and then we have to close it, close the curly bracket. And now as we did it into the last time too, so we say export default mocks, and then close it using semicolon. Now you already know how this file needs to be saved as, so it has to be saved as mocks.js, and we are trying to replace the mocks that already exist in there. And we'll come back to the GraphQL and move ahead with this. Now if you get back to GraphQL interface where we left off and still run the same query, you will be able to see now this query actually makes sense. So now we had changed the mock, and we did the mocking to fetch a data in a right manner. At high level, actually, mocks for each type just define a function that gets run when an object of that type should be returned. So this is about the mocking, and in the next part we will see how resolvers work, and we'll continue with the resolvers in the next part. Coming on to the next topic, that is resolvers. So now, in order for a server to be more useful, we have to tell it how to respond to a query. In a GraphQL, this is done through a resolve functions. Every field can have a resolve function which tells GraphQL server how to return data for the field if it appears in a query. The first resolve function for the author field on the query is the first one to be called. For example, query that you ran earlier, the return value of the resolve function then gets passed to the resolve functions on the fields of author. For example, you saw post. The result that get passed onto the next resolve function until so-called scalar type is reached. Scalar types are GraphQL speak for leaf nodes in the graph. Now let's go ahead and define resolve function for our schema. At the minimum, we need to define a resolve function for the each field that either returns a non-scalar type or takes any arguments, and we will define the resolve function in the location that we saw earlier with the name resolvers.js, and let's create a file again in the notepad and try to save it in the same location that we used earlier. So let's try to the code and use a resolve function for the purpose. So now let's say resolvers and equal to, and then start writing into the curly bracket. So say query, and how then that query should be. So it should have author, and it will have, obviously it will be taken from root and will be taken as argument, and then close the bracket, and then we say return what you want to return, and it is id, say 1, comma, first name has to be returned. So here for the time being we say it has to be the value hello, and the last name can be over here. For this example we keep it as world. All right, and then we are supposed to close the bracket and give out the semicolon, close the bracket, and then comma, then close it, then comma, and then again how author needs to be, it again needs to be defined. So author will have post, obviously author we have earlier, so type author, so that will be taken from that particular location. So it says post, and then it's a type text, and what we need in the text is, so it will be some text, and then there are going to be views, obviously. So there are 2 views, and close it with a comma, and then specify id, which we'll keep 2 for example, and text, instead put title here, and say what title is, just any numeric name you can give. So I'm just saying it is another post, say for example, and then comma, and say text. Then again you say what you want in a text to be present. So some other text, views 200, and then close it with and then we forgot to mention here one thing. So we have to like right here, these are the return values. So we have to write a return keyword and then open up a bracket, which we need to close down there. Okay, I thought we have returned it, but okay, it was a mistake. So put a comma and then close the outer one, and let's come out to the now post. So now what we want in a post, we want author and write post into it, and now say return and ID is 1, say for example, and what is it, first name that we require, right? And the value that we want is what is hello, and it is a queried for last name. So value that is to be returned is world, and then close it. This is the example of the resolver that we are doing. So how it has to be resolved is what we have to see, or what are we expecting when it will be resolved. Okay, and then we have to close it with the semicolon, and then we have to write the export statement that we are using it for long. So say resolver, close it with the semicolon, and as I told you, we will have to save into the same location data, but this time the name will be resolvers.js. But before you change the server, we have to make certain changes into it. So let's see what changes will we make. We have to stop mock from being used now, since we are using the resolver. So let's get back to the server code and make some changes into it. So now to make resolvers work, we have to make certain changes in a server file. So in your folder where you have installed starter kit, you will find a server file. You have to right click on the server file and open it with a notepad, and you have to make certain changes in the code. For example, at the top you have to write import resolvers from, you have to specify a location, and in data folder we will then create this resolvers file. So this location you have to specify over here, and along with that you have to comment out the mocks that are present. So if I look here in GraphQL Server.use, if I go at the last line, I find mocks over there. I have to comment it out, and along with that I have to mention resolvers as this resolver, so that to indicate that in my server I am going to use resolvers instead of mocks. So these are the crucial changes that we need to make in order to work with resolvers rather than mock. Once you are done with that, you got to save the file, and you have to come back to the browser. So now if I run the same query that I ran earlier, I'll be able to see that title is being written as a post, views as 2, first name and last name as hello world. Another post has been written and views as 200. So it has written exactly what we had written in the resolve function. So this is how resolvers work, and in the next part we have to see how we can connect SQL with the GraphQL and work with it. So this is pretty much interesting now to see what packages are required to connect GraphQL to a SQL database. So welcome to the session for connecting GraphQL to SQL database. Now, in order to get a data from a SQL database into GraphQL response, we have to write a connector and then use the connector from the resolve function. Technically, you can write the database connection logic directly in the resolve function, but it's much better to keep your resolve function extremely simple and separate your concerns that way. If you need to change backends later, you only have to change connectors. The resolve functions can stay the same. So in this example, we will have to use a SQL ORM that we'll install to connect to a SQL Lite database. So first we'll install SQL Lite as well as a load dash that we will require later. So let's get to the command prompt and write a code to install it. So the code that we are supposed to write is npm install SQLite, and or first you can write Sqlize. So Sqlize, Sqlite, and lodash, and then hit the enter and wait for the computer to respond to it and install it. So as you can see, an installation has just begun. So now we see this has installed, and now our next part is to create a file named connector.js in a data folder. If we remember that we had used that, there we have created our mock and a schema, those files. So in that particular location we are supposed to create now connector.js, and in it we will set up the database connection and define the schema of our database. To have some data to query, we will use casual again to create some fake data every time the server starts. So we saw we had used casual 2 yesterday. We had seen we had installed casual. So now let's write the connector code for it. Now let's build connector.js file. So we got to import. So we say import Sqlize from, and then in quotations we have to say Sqlize. That is what we are providing. Now say import casual from casual. So because we had installed casual earlier, we can use it now, and say import. So just a bit of changes here, and we say import from lodash, and then db equal to, it's the new database that have to be called, and then we say new Sqlize, and then in bracket you have to say block, and you have to give out the null. So put a dialog in here and say SQL Lite, and say storage, and that we have to define where we are going to store it, put it under quotations, and do not leave any unbalanced quotations. So we usually unknowingly do that. So it says blog dot Sql Lite, and then close this bracket, and we also require a semicolon after that. Now next is author model that we have to build, and that will be taken from, so we have to define a database over here and put author, comma, write down first name, then say type, and since this is the Sql Lite string, so we got to say Sql Lite dot string in nature, or rather write it in a capital way. So Sql Lite string it is, because it's a name, so definitely it's a character data, so let's keep a string for it. Then say last name, and obviously this will also share the same type, so we say type Sql Lite string, Sql Lite dot string, and then close the bracket, and then you require comma, close it, and close the outer curly bracket. And now there has to be a post model, obviously, so let's name it the same way, post model. So now what post should have, I mean database should have, so it has got post, comma, title, and then type, which says Sql Lite. Now that is again post are like comments, so obviously it will have a format string, so put a comma, and then close it. We still have one more thing to define, that is text in here, which says it has got a type, so Sql Lite dot string, and then close it, close the outer bracket, and then close the curly bracket. Now at the end there are only two more things to be done, that says author model dot has many, so we have to pull from post model, so this is the number that will be counted, and then close it using semicolon. And next what it says is post, so model is required, so post model dot belongs to, so what it belongs to, it belongs to the above mentioned author model. Fine with this, so let's close it, and now we know we have to save it with a, okay, now before we save it we have to use a casual, so we cannot forget it, we have to use it. So casual dot seed, and then in the bracket the number you mentioned, it's 1 2 3, and then we have to sync the database. So you say db.sync, and then say force, we got to true because we are forcing a synchronization here. So now close it and then say dot then what you want, then in the bracket it's 10 comma, and then we have to say first name, which is of casual dot first underscore name, and we require last name, which is of type casual dot last underscore name, then say dot then, and in the bracket you got author, and then you close it. So what you want something in return, so it says return, we write a close to it, so or rather we write, okay, so what do you want in return? We want author dot create post, and then this post will be forming a title. So because, and it should have some title name, so what it shall be, rather keep it in a post by, and the rest of the part will be filled up from where, it will be taken from author. So from author we have to pull name, so that we are specifying here, okay, and that is the format text, which is from casual dot sentences, fine, and now you got to close all the curly brackets that are open up. So there are almost 4 brackets to be closed, like it too much. So these are the connectors basically that are required. So now this file has to be saved with a name, so, and it is connectors.js, and it has to be under the same folder where we had written Apollo starter kit. So we got to save it, and now we will see how to use it for using SQL database. And now that we have got connectors, we just have to make a small change in our file of resolvers. So once you open the resolver file in the notepad, you just have to make a little bit of change. So at the top it has got import author from connectors. So this you have to mention at the top. Rest everything is okay, and you got to save the file. Now if you run the same query that we ran earlier, you'll be able to see a reply has been returned as author, name, and then title, a post by the first name of the author that is specified in the connections if you remember, and then there are no views, so value is been returned as null. So this is about connecting to a SQL database. Now let's explore one of the greatest feature of GraphQL. So joining across different backends, in this case that is SQL and MongoDB. We could have used SQL database for the views as well, but often you have to work with existing legacy backends, or you have certain scaling requirements that can only be met by splitting your backend into what you call different services. Now to illustrate how useful Apollo can be in those cases, we are going to use MongoDB to store the views. For the next part, you have to got a MongoDB installed and configured correctly on your computer. So now we'll begin with defining a connector file that as we created earlier too. So connector.js is again that is required, but before that you have to run npm install, what is it, Mongoose. And since I have already have it installed on my machine, I will not be running it again. So let's just start writing the connector file for MongoDB now. Now let's begin with writing up a code. So say import Mongoose from, obviously that is from Mongoose only, and then we say Mongoose dot connect. Now where would you connect it? So say MongoDB, because it is again a local host slash where we have got views, right? And then close it and then say view. Obviously we require schemas, so but where would you be getting schemas from? So again mongoose dot schema, and then you have to say post id. So post has got some id, right, that we will require, and it will have a type number. Am I right? So put a comma, and then below it we require views. Now views are also the number because it will show the number of views. All right, and then okay, and then obviously view also have to be taken from somewhere. So it says mongoose dot model views comma view schema, and again now we have to make a use of a casual. So we say casual dot, we have to do it seed, and we say 1 2 3, that's fine. And again sync is required, so db dot sync, and since this is the forceful sync, so you will say yes, force the synchronization, so which is set to the true, and then close it. And then what you require, so you will say dot then what we need is, open up the curly bracket, and times 10 and then again a curly bracket which says return author model dot create, and what you need is first name, and then say last name. Okay, so it says, so we will be taking from a causal now also, so causal last underscore name, and close it. Now write dot then what you want, we want to access author, so from author I'm expecting return author dot create post so again that we did earlier, we have to do it. I'm just writing it so that you understand and it's readable. So create post, we have to specify title, so a title shall start by a post by, and we have to drag the author's name, so we said dollar, and author has to be dragged only from a first name, so first name, and then you got to close it, close the colon. Okay, I forgot to put it before a, so we need it before a2, and we require text, so here you put comma, and now you say you need text, so it's text that is also required, so you say text. Okay, now text has to be extracted from casual dot sentences 3 of course, and then close this. And then you say dot then post has to be under a double bracket. Obviously post, we are describing something about it, so and what we need from post. So you say the new part start here, and then you specify the post ID, which is post.id, and apart from that we also require views. So you say views, and since views are the number, so we say casual dot integer, and we provide a range, so it will start from 0 and can go to 100. So it's customizable, so it's up to you. And then you have to say set and set it to true, close it, close the outer bracket that we had started, and then close all the external brackets that we had opened up. So what we'll do is close this, have to close this. Obviously do not have to forget about semicolon. So you have to keep track of how many brackets you open up. And then at the very bottom you have to say export what you want to export. We want author, then post, and then views. Oh, we require curly brackets. And now we will save it with the name connector.js. Now we have saved the file with the name connector.js, but still we also need to make some minor changes in the resolvers to indicate that we are making a use of these connectors over here. So let's see what changes we'll require. So only have to make a changes in the post. So post have to be mentioned it in this order. So post author, and in the post, so return post dot get author, and then views post return view dot find one. Then you have to specify post ID, that has to be taken from post dot id, and dot then views have to be taken from view dot views, and save the file. Okay, and now we'll try to execute. So if you run the same query in GraphQL, now you will be able to see the views is not null anymore.